Hey, what's up, lightboltjoe here. Today we're going to discuss the 2024 Netflix original show, Season 2 of Arcane. 9 episodes long. Season 1 came out in 2001. 2001. 2021. I was just talking to somebody about early millennial stuff. So I had the 2000s on the brain. 2021 was Season 1. 2024 is Season 2. 3 years in between. Took a very long time to make. COVID was a big part of that. Shutdowns were a part of that. Working remotely was a part of that. So we finally got it. That's it. That's all we get. We'll eventually get some spin-off seasons and such here and there, series here and there of other characters from other League of Legends world. But that's it for these particular story that we got. This particular story we got. It's interesting because I went from Prime's Dungeons and Dragons Legend of Vox Machina to the Netflix's League of Legends Arcane. So it's pretty cool going from video game show to video game show in regards to watching show to show. Very different shows, don't get me wrong. Arcane Season 2 was wonderful. I didn't like the Vi and Jinx story, to be completely honest, just because it was so predictable. I loved something in this very specifically, and I will discuss it, but the whole 9 episodes, it's a will they, won't they, in regards to who's gonna off the next person kind of a thing, right? Jinx or Vi has to perish. Who's it gonna be? When is it gonna be? At whose hand is who gonna perish, right? And then eventually we get to the end, and then there's a sacrifice, and then someone perishes. But there was too many opportune moments throughout the entirety of Season 2 where, okay, well, Jinx has the perfect moment to off Vi, and she doesn't. Vi has the perfect moment to off Jinx, but she doesn't. And then, yes, there's the whole character development. You know, I have Vi having faith in her sister Jinx, and Jinx just wants nothing to do with anybody. So it's just a weird dynamic because you know it's going to end with someone passing. You know it's going to end with someone not making it. Who's it going to be? When's it going to be? So then eventually it happens. We get the who and we get the when. And that's it. There's no surprise to it. There's no boo-hoo so sad because you knew it was coming. You expected it. It happened. So things that did surprise me that I really liked about this is I loved Echo's story of going to another dimension, getting into an alt universe, an alt timeline, and coming then back to his timeline with his 4-second clanging monkey machine. That was just such a cool, finally seeing him happy and getting to hug the people he lost again. It was just a nice, rekindling kind of moment, a good breather, a reprieve, if you will, for Echo. He's a wonderful character, so it's good that he got his, little reprieve. Other characters doing their own things, who's backstabbing whom when, and top side versus low side, top city versus down city. It's predictable. We've seen it, but it's just still fun. It's a good dynamic. It's a nice means of showing then integration of magic into technology, that the hex tech is now a thing and people are starting to utilize that, and what happens next, right? The thing that I absolutely love the most about this particular season, probably the series, is Jace and Victor's story arc, where Victor then eventually absorbs the arcane, basically becomes arcane infused, and then takes his magic and he's able to, heal others and become one hive mind, if you will, and they're all one and good for the whole and all this stuff. And it was just really cool seeing how the arcane is explained, the magic is explained, that the arcane is not just magic, but it's this dimension as well. What I really loved about this in regards to a SOC, a SOC, if you will, stream of consciousness explanation, is I'm watching this and I'm like, this is literally World Between Worlds of the Force in Star Wars. It's the same exact thing. So because I have that comparison to ground me, it's not as mind-blowing because I'm familiar with this. So because I am familiar with this, I did enjoy seeing this because I didn't know eventually what Arcane was going to be. I didn't know it was going to be very Force related. I didn't know it was going to be World Between Worlds related. Season 1, you don't really get any inclination on that. So when they revealed it to be such a thing, I was freaking the freak out because it's such a wonderful way to explain an interconnection. And I think Star Wars does an incredible job in the TV series in both Rebels, Clone Wars, Ahsoka. They are in World Between Worlds at one point as well. I love having Ahsoka and Ezra and the Loth Wolves just come back and forth and being able to do stuff. Ahsoka and Anakin have their moment. Darth Vader has his moment with Ezra at one point. It's very nice to see these things because it's a wonderful way of showing an interconnectedness. It's wonderful seeing how do you travel back in time and forwards and in between and all these different things through different ley lines, through different lines of force. So having Arcane kind of explain it in that sort of gist was neat to see that the arcane is used to then as a force aspect, as a magic aspect, that people sometimes aren't just born with magic, they have to utilize it into technology. So that's what they do. And it's neat to see that they can use that magic, they can use that force into a technological aspect, but they don't really do that in Star Wars. They don't take force energy into, well, correction. I got to correct myself, because technically you can use a kyber crystal to make a lightsaber, but in hindsight, kyber crystal is not actually force related. Semantics. Each has their own benefit to it, but I liked seeing that comparison, Arcane Worlds versus World Between Worlds of Star Wars, Force and Magic. Very cool. I thought that was neat. And then I've, of course, freak out, having the Victor as the hooded figure reveal at the end that JC's in the beginning. The end is the beginning for the two of them. Their story then goes into a loop. It's a wonderful disappearing story for them. It's a very true what happens next. I was so enamored, and I genuinely want to know what happens next with their story because it was unpredictable. I did not see any of that coming. I didn't see that force comparison coming. I didn't see that Victor being the hooded figure in the beginning. Didn't see it. I didn't see it. I didn't guess it. I didn't see it. So that story really drew my attention more than Vi and Jinx's story, which is interesting because Jace and Victor are not the main characters of this. They're tertiary characters in this. Vi and Jinx are the main characters of this. Vi and Powder are the main characters of this. So it's an interesting aspect when sometimes a franchise presents you with a side story which is better than the main story. It happens. It happens in Star Wars all the time. It happens in some of the Percy Jackson books. Sometimes you want to see what happens more of those secondary characters. Yeah, Percy does his stuff. Wonderful. You all know it's going to work out in the end. Even though he might die a few times, he might come back. You don't know. But he's been in the underworld a bunch of times. Things happen. I want to know what happens with Jason. I want to know what happens with Piper. I want to know what happens with Leo. I want to know what happens with Frank. I want to know what happens with Hazel. You want to know what happens with these other secondary characters that are going on with their story as Percy and Annabeth are doing their thing, right? It's a good comparison. Sometimes secondary characters have better story arcs than primary characters. How? Couldn't tell you. Why? Also couldn't tell you. It happens though. So this is a good example. The Vi and Jinx storyline was extremely predictable. I knew what was going to happen at some point, and it happened. The Victor and Jace storyline, I had no clue what the hell was going on, did not expect anything of that ending, and it was gorgeous. It's a wonderful wrap-up of that story. And again, I really want to know what happens next for those characters. That's what's cool about art. You are presented with certain information. Take it as you want. You can see it as something in a metaphorical aspect, or you could just take it at face value. That's what the benefit of art is. Picture's worth 1,000 words, right? Just because you're looking at this from this angle and I look at it from this angle does not mean we look at the same thing. Art is supposed to be interpreted. That's what's cool about this show, because it leaves a lot of room for interpretation. Loved Arcane. Very curious what happens next. Arcane Season 2. Wonderful, wonderful show. Wonderful, wonderful season. Wonderful wrap-up, if you will. On to the next review. Mucho mahalo.